Hello, welcome to the Usability podcast. I am Dr. Chris Parker, and today we're going to be talking about heuristics for expert evaluation. So a lot of the time as designers, we have to create, something quick. We got to create something on the fly. Maybe we got to do a quick session to look at an interface or a website and say, you know what, this needs to change, that needs to change. And to do that, we have these things called heuristics. So what is a heuristic? We're going to be covering that today, looking at the work of Nielsen, looking at the general usability stuff, looking at the accessibility stuff that's really great for just making an inclusive environment, and then thinking about what it's like to be an expert and how you approach this as someone who's maybe new to the field as a student or just entering the world of UX. So when we say heuristics, the first thing people do is go, it's Jakob Nielsen. Now, Nielsen in the early 90s set out 10 very good principles of usability. These are visibility of the system, matching between the system and the real world, giving the user freedom and control, having consistency throughout the whole website, preventing errors, using recognition of action rather than the user's memory, giving flexibility so that if you're new to the system, you can get through it really quickly with some defaults, but also letting the advanced users get in there and really customize it to their needs in a way which doesn't interfere with the flow of the novices. You've got aesthetics, which are very minimal and very pleasing. Then you've got helping people recognize errors when they occur. Finally, great documentation. Now, those things sound very common sense, and they probably sound common sense because all the designers making things around us on our phones, on our computers, are adhering to them. Or at least they've been brought up in a world which lives in this way. But there's something missing from this, which is it any good? So you might have a website which does all of those things. So we know what's happening in the system. We know what things do. It's instantly recognizable. It's familiar. I'm feeling control. I can do what I like. But the content kind of sucks. So the idea of having a usable system under Nielsen's guidelines is very divorced from the idea of satisfaction. Also, Nielsen didn't talk about performance. There's nothing about how easy it is to achieve a task fast. Nothing about how we don't get lost, per se. Sure, we have error prevention, but it's not really about preventing getting lost down a rabbit hole because maybe we've got some kind of dark UX. Now, the CEO of a company says, hey, I got this new scheme. It's going to be all the season's clothes are going to be videoed for us, and we're going to put this video on the front page of our website. It's going to show amazing branding, amazing clothes, amazing actresses, whatever you like. We're pushing that there. It's playing along, and it's the kind of thing you think, hey, if I just click on this video, it'll stop it. Because we're trained that way from YouTube. When you click, no, it goes down a different route over there, which is taking us to a product page, selling us lots of really high value items so the company makes lots of money. That isn't technically unusable in Nielsen's world. It's just a really sucky system. So you got to bear in mind the limitations of this, and that you've really got to take any kind of usability heuristics in line with other usability metrics. Now, in a few weeks' time, we're going to be covering a whole load of these. We're going to be covering biometrics, we're going to be covering satisfaction, going to be covering performance, going to be covering psychology, and going to be covering dark UX and loads more. So anything to say, bear in mind. But moving on, we've had a quick thing about Nielsen. Generally, it's really great stuff. When I speak to consultants and when I'm doing consultancy work at Loughborough University, then quite often we don't have a list called Nielsen. We just keep it at the back of our mind, and we just intuitively do this, and we learn as experts that this list of things are really useful. The other list which is really useful to keep in mind, and this is one which I do keep on my desk, is the WCAG 2.1 guidelines. These are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Now, usability and accessibility are very different topics. So usability is all about, can someone get on with the task? Whereas accessibility is saying, hey, you might have a disability, be it hidden or visible. Can you still use the website well? A lot of it comes down to quite techie stuff about coding, and we don't really worry about that too much in the UX world. We care more about the visible stuff, but it's worth bearing in mind. Anyway, WCAG 2.1, if you follow all the guides, you're going to have a great system that works well with lots of things. I'm not going to go into all the details, all the levels. There's A rated for real basics. When you're prototyping, it's good to factor in. But you need to have at least AA rating, if not AAA rating. Don't worry about what those are. Just Google WCAG 2.1 and you'll see the ratings explained on the website. It's really easy to read. But it breaks down to say that design that's accessible online should be perceivable. It should be operable and it should be understandable. And finally, it should be robust. But what are these? So when you got something which is perceivable design, that's things like saying, if you've got a picture, there should be a text alternative. If there's audio, there should be transcripts available. There should be captions on videos. Any sort of paragraphs, text are done in a meaningful sequence so that when you got a screen reader coming along or any kind of assistive technology, it can work out what things are easily, there's a good flow, and the user can understand it very clearly. Operable design means that the person can control the system really well. I guess that works well with Nielsen's idea of user control, but it goes into very specific detail. So you got to have the website or system controllable from a keyboard. So you should be able to map keys and do things. You don't have some keys doing something on one part of the page, go to a different part of the website or system and different keys match. And you got videos, you got things working on loops. The user can control that. They can turn it on and off, etc. Now, understandable design is more into the, closer to Nielsen stuff. So you give every single page a language tag so that your translator can go, hey, this is what your language is. You're going to identify errors when they turn up. You're going to let forms have, you don't have these auto-submit things that you can go through and you can check, which is really important. Now, when I use screen readers, which is not too often, but when I have voice recognition, it happens. You put up the numbers on the screens, things start going crazy because people don't format it the way that they should. Anyhow, giving labeling, instructing things, and a robust design. It's things like the code is good. You're not having bad code and errors inside. That gets into the real techie stuff. Now, there's loads of podcasts and videos on WCAG 2.1. In the future, I'll probably do another podcast on this, get a guest in and go into more details. But for now, I hope you got a good understanding of, the two big players in the heuristic world, the Nielsen's 10 holy list, like 10 commandments, and WCAG 2.1's more techie, more guided list of things to do. There is a problem with this though, so it's not just that the content can suck. Once again, you can have a website or an app or software which is fully accessible. We are working fully with all the Mac and Windows accessibility icons, screen readers are going great. You got AAA certification, but the content still sucks. And what we're delivering in the content is we're solving a problem that no one really has, which is totally against the idea of what UX is. UX is all about solving problems that people genuinely have. And you may not even realize that you have this problem and you just accepted it as part of life and there you are. So satisfaction, does it count for usability? Hell yeah, it matters so much because if you don't enjoy using something, if you don't enjoy getting in there and making it part of your daily life, you're not going to use it. It's pushing you away. So satisfaction, performance, really important. We're going to come on to that. But you got to bear in mind, heuristics are generally not going to be working in that. the exception to rule. I can imagine some of you are thinking, hey, I have heuristics in my mind that do work on this. As we work as professionals, we grow in experience and we know what's good, what's bad, what people love, what they need, what they don't need, all that stuff. So we build our own internal heuristics, even if we're not trying to. So yeah, sure, we can add to that. And that leads on to the final thought on this, which is applying heuristics is hard. You might think that you can Google Nielsen, see great writings in his words, and he's a good writer. You can read his stuff clearly, which is the hallmark of any good academic. You can do WCAG, and there's books and websites of how to audit yourself, how to make it work, and you can go through a process, but you got to think, okay, is my system status actually visible? What does that even mean? I'm on a website for, I'm going to buy some clothes, ASOS or Next or any of these other big hitters in the UK, and go, right, the system's doing something. It's searching, it's filtering, it's waiting. I'm going to check out. The screen's paused, and you're going, is this a problem? I mean, sure, I got a blank screen for a second. That's not really a problem, but could it be on a slow connection? And that's experience. The idea of matching between real worlds, passing through Nielsen again. Skeuomorphism is really awesome when you bring in a new bit of kit in a new way, which is replicating the existing world. So we go, we build the first digital theremin. Okay, I know it's been done before, but it's a really awesome instrument. And all theremin players, they've learnt how to do it intuitively. So an interface which really mimics the real world. Everything's got shadow and shape in a skeuomorphic way. That's going to really help build up their mental models of how to play a theremin. A better example would have been back in 2009. Apple, was it 2010? I can't remember. Back in the late 2000s, Apple brought out iBooks, and we had this virtual bookshelf, which looked like a real bookshelf, and it really taught us that, hey, these are electronic books, and this is your shelf, and you know how to use a bookshelf. You know how to use a library. This is just the same. It's inviting the same mental models into the world. Now, after a few years, we're okay with it. I think it was around, it was iOS 7 where we started flattening everything. At least Apple flattened everything, because we'd already got those mental models built in there. And we knew what iBooks were. We knew what Kindle was. We knew what electronic library of books was. We did not need skeuomorphism anymore to help us navigate this new world, because the world was no longer new. So, okay, how do we know as designers when that time comes to flatten or simplify? When do we know when to jump straight in with a simple interface or bring in skeuomorphic elements? When do we know how to do any of this stuff? When do we know how to give control, take it away? When do we know when errors are going to prevent? When we haven't done user testing, how can we anticipate that? How can we tell the difference between an error going down a rabbit hole on a website and a delightful Easter egg surprise? These are all skills. I could go on, but these are all skills you gain with experience through observing people, through running user testing, through reading, through watching, and getting outside your own skin. It's so easy to look at any kind of interface device and go, hey, I find this so easy. I find this the greatest thing ever. But, that's you, and that's awesome. But, you're not everyone. I work with guys where like everyone I work with has a PhD, and you kind of get sucked in this world where everyone thinks in that way. But you know what? It's a really weird way of thinking. 99% of the population don't think that way. So you got to question yourself and go, okay, well, how could someone think or feel when they've never seen this before, when it's brand new? And that, again, that kind of empathy building skill takes time. And it's not to say that, we're the best. Hell no. It's also saying that sometimes you're the worst person. Sometimes you have the most skewed view. And you've really got to respect the learning curve of somebody, because after all, we all know what we know, and we only know what we know, and we only learn through experience. So we should make the experience great for everyone learning. Heuristics are a great guiding arrow, but they're only a guiding arrow. The number one tool you have as a usability engineer, do we still use that term? We're all UX designers anyway. When you're sort of engineering the usability as part of the UX process, the greatest skill is your own empathy, your own experience, and listening to others. So I hope you found this informative. I hope you found it useful. And I really can't wait to hear from you about how you've used these principles in your own work. Next week, we're going to be talking about biometrics, so about heart rate sensors, skin conductivity sensors, eye tracking, which is the major thing everyone loves about biometrics. We're going to be getting into how it's used, why it's used, and what you can do with it as a UX designer. So I'm Dr. Chris Parker. This is the Usability Podcast, and thank you.